Welcome back to Raised by Giants. Good to see everyone. Welcome everyone in the chat and any moderators and channel members out there. And if you're listening to the audio only, welcome to the show. And if you're watching on YouTube or X, be sure to follow the audio only on any and all podcast platforms. You can set it to where the shows are automatically downloaded upon release. So be sure to follow the show on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Amazon, iHeartRadio, and Google Podcasts so you never miss a show. The links are in the description. A Clockwork Shining is now available on Tubi. Anywhere you can download the Tubi app, you can now watch my documentary, A Clockwork Shining, on Tubi. So even if you've seen it already on Amazon Prime or Apple TV Plus, watch it again on Tubi. I have the link pinned to the top of the chat and is also in the description. So with that down, introducing our guest. He is the co-host and the co-producer of MKZINE Radio. He's done extensive research into artificial intelligence and a remote electronic mind control. He's currently writing a book titled Theater of Shadows that covers virtual reality simulations, digital avatars, and AI managed Manchurian candidates. The book is planned for release this year, 2025, in the fall. Jason Stone, welcome to the show, my friend. How's it going?
It's going well, Ryder. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
This is a really interesting topic, and I kind of dive into this in my documentary a little bit with the Manchurian candidate stuff and mind control and MK Ultra, because that seems to be what MK Ultra really was about. I mean, it was a few different things, but I believe that a large majority of it was to create assassins. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think under the project MK Ultra, there was like about 129 sub-projects. So they were looking at controlling people, influencing their behavior from using a variety of methods, right? And so like whether from drugs, hypnosis, psychic driving, other methods. So yeah, this is a big part of it. And I think today we see that continued. I look at MK Ultra as something that's ongoing, not necessarily in the form that it originally started, but these things have a tendency to be stopped officially and then continue on in other forms. So whether it's like subcontracted out or a different group picks it up. To me, I look at the targeted individual situation, or TIs, as a continuation of that. MK Ultra laid the groundwork, tested the method, and then it was applied en masse. And now it's actually happening wirelessly, remotely. And they were researching this even back into like the 1950s and 1960s. John C. Lilly was interested in looking in creating like push button assassins or remote controlled assassins. And so if you look into his work, you can see that intention.
Well, there's actually a video that I'm going to show here in just a little bit, which is from a gentleman named Woody Norris that is doing a TED Talk, and he's essentially talking about this technology and how it works, and he's one of the creators and the developers of this technology. Now, when it comes to supposed targeted individuals. And this question might piss you off, but I have to ask it because it seems like nobody can ever really answer my question. And that is why? Like you just mentioned like MK Ultra and stuff, but there's been several people that have claimed to be targeted individuals and electronically harassed. I mean, it goes back way further. It goes into like Leonard Keel with the Kodak camera, where they gave him like he got brain surgery and then they implanted a chip into his head that made him basically go crazy, and he ended up in a psych ward. And then that's where this tinfoil hat thing came from, because he would wrap his head in tinfoil, which would supposedly block the frequencies to be able to get into his mind. And then you get into more modern things like James Wolbert. Are you familiar with James Wolbert?
James, what's the last name again?
Wolbert, Walbert, where he was.
No, I'm not familiar with him.
So he had a lawsuit. So he was a part of this company, and he was claiming that they were electronically harassing him and that they had put an implant in his head. And then he actually sued, and he won the lawsuit. And that actually changed a lot of brain implantations in a lot of states in the United States. So it's not like this technology doesn't exist, and that there aren't stories and there aren't verifiable stories. But when you look at, like, how many people claim to be, targeted individuals, do you think that all of them are legitimately targeted individuals? Because there's so many different mental illnesses, there's, schizophrenia, there's paranoia, and also drugs are a main driving factor that can literally turn people into, like, going into a psychosis really quickly. And I don't think that the drugs help any type of situation. They might even, like, induce what they're hearing, right? And that goes into, Andrija Puharich, which was putting these, like, dental implants into people. They were having them, oh, well, go get your cavity filled or get a root canal or whatever. And then they were giving people, like, these, essentially like a microchip dental implant into their head, and then that's what was creating, like, what people were hearing. Lucille Ball had this
Right.
happen to her, where she literally got information from a Japanese insurgency and then contacted the government, and then they stopped the insurgency because her tooth cavity was picking up the signal from the radio frequencies that they were hearing. So it seems like that it's done on purpose, like they're trying to induce this type of thing on a lot of the population. And then when you look at how many people are on pharmaceutical drugs, dude, it is an insane number of people in the United States alone. Over half the population is on some form of pharmaceutical drug. And then when you look at, like, Eli Lilly and Company, and Eli Lilly and Company was the first manufacturer for the CIA in the United States for LSD. They were also the first manufacturer of Prozac, right? And then they're pushing out all these antipsychotic medications and antidepressant medications, So, I mean, what's your thoughts on all that?
Well, you brought up several good points. Um, so just going back to MK Ultra, so one of the fundamental projects that they had was testing out these different techniques of control, testing out drugs on different people who were unwitting, who had no idea that this was happening to them, right? This continued on, a project in the early 1980s. It's called Project Sleeping Beauty. Tested that same exact idea. It was using remote electronic brain stimulation to see if they could influence the behavior of unwitting targets. And so in MK Ultra, when they were using drugs, it was a way to have a starting point. So to take a person's personality and to shift it or change it after the use of drugs, right? So using all these pharmaceuticals, it provides a plausible or a reasonable point to overlay a new personality, to interfere with the previous state of the being, and to create a new personality, let's just say, if that makes sense. And then as to the reason why, it's pretty simple. Medical research and military research. You have this weapon, you have this technology, you want to test it out on a wide variety of people. And I didn't come up with this idea. This is Robert Duncan. He's the author of The Matrix Deciphered and Project Soulcatcher. He's one of the individuals who worked on these projects at a very high level. One of the alphabet agencies, actually a few of them. So you would, anyhow, his idea is that this is basically in one way or another, it's a research project testing out the use of this technology, seeing how it works, improving it, and so on. And the way that you can tell perhaps that this is working is you see these patterns, right? You see these patterns within people where they're having some sort of what we call mental illness, which can be created remotely. You can overlay the signals of a person's brain using another person's what do you call it, brain patterns or brain frequency. That makes sense.
I'm muted, sorry. What about
Sorry.
the people, what about the people that have been experiencing this before the technology had ever happened? I mean, schizophrenia goes back decades and decades and decades. I mean, people have been hearing voices in their heads for a really long time.
Well, let's talk about schizophrenia. If you go back and you look at the way it's defined, originally in the early 1900s, the average person that was diagnosed with schizophrenia was usually timid, quiet, white women who were basically turned over to the medical system by their husbands because they either, weren't putting out or weren't cooperating. Maybe they wanted some independence or something along those lines. You go and you shift to the 1950s and 1960s. The average person that was being diagnosed with schizophrenia was usually young, black, and interested in the civil rights movement. And this is documented outside of the conspiracy theory world. This is in the academic circles. This is known. I mean, not very well known. You can look it up, but there's like, how does a mental illness go from being mostly timid white women who are quiet to being like what they considered antisocial, angry, violent, and so on. And there was nothing attached to it concerning like hearing voices or anything like that. That wasn't even in the original DSM. It was attached later on. I think in the second DSM, the hearing voices thing was attached to alcoholics, and it was more of like a narrative of like an alcoholic feeling like down or depressed and having sort of like a depressed inner monologue. So, and as far as the ability to transmit hearing voices, that's pretty well documented too. And I mean, there are people in the government that have come out and said, yes, this technology exists. Yes, the Havana syndrome is real. They testified in Congress and they basically said, yeah, we understand how this technology works. Basically, it's designed to make someone feel like they're going crazy, to make them feel like they're losing touch with reality. So mostly it's a lack of imagination and knowledge on the part of the public who just aren't interested in following up and verifying any of the information that's out there.
Well, also the CIA came out and said that there was nothing to the Havana syndrome stuff. There's a huge article on it, but I mean, we can't trust anything that they say. They just came out and said that Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself and that there was nothing to that and he didn't have a client list. So
Right.
it's a back and forth thing. Like it's like verified 1 minute and then the next minute, nothing to it.
That's
And
the method, right? It's a way to announce and deny it the same situation. So it's sort of like a psyop type thing, right? Where you provide a little bit of information, you say, yeah, it's totally happening, and then someone off to the side says, no way, that's not happening. So there's no way to form like a concrete basis, especially if you don't follow it up on your own and look into it.
yeah, I've shown the article here several times on the show. I would have already had it up if I. Man, I hate Google sometimes. Yeah, because it's like a flip flopping back and forth thing, like all the time with these people.
Yeah,
The
I mean,
Washington Post Havana syndrome isn't caused by electronic. Oh my god! Now I got to sign into this. Within the articles, you got to sign up for. Okay, there is so much anger. Havana syndrome victims frustrated CIA isn't blaming Russia for the symptoms. I don't know where it is, but they basically came out and said that they found no evidence of the Havana syndrome being connected to electronic harassment or something. This was like 3 years ago or whatever. I
Well, I
can't
mean,
find the right article.
there's no reason for them to come out and say, yeah, this is actually happening, because then they'd have to admit, yeah, we can do this too, basically, right? I mean, if there's somebody else out in the world that can do this, then obviously it's going to be available at home. Um, the documentation is out there. It's known. Microwave hearing, all of that. That was down back in the 60s, but even started in World War II, 1920s in the Soviet Union. They were looking into this as well. So it's been developing for a while.
Well, the one thing that I'm really curious about, Jason, is there has to be some kind of back door into this thing, like in order to make you susceptible to it, because I 100% believe that if you have a rational, clear mind, like it couldn't possibly affect you, because if you have a rational, clear mind, then you're going to know that this is something that's coming from outside of you. Like this is something that's like happening to you, right? And but if you don't, if you're under the influence of something, or if you have trauma, or if you have, I think that they have to have a back door into your mind, right? And that back door is through drugs, through trauma, and that's why we see these big types of traumatizing events, right? We had 2020, we had 9/11, JFK assassination. It goes on and on and on and on, right? We get these mass, huge, nationwide traumatizing events, and then that gives them this back door into people's minds, and then also through the media and through the amount of drugs, illicit drug use or prescription drug use, that gives them the ability to intercept into people's minds. And I think that that would be the only way that it could work, because if you weren't under the influence of some sort of drug, if you weren't mass traumatized or even traumatized on like an individual level, right, like something that happened to you personally when you were growing up or something like that, because that's the common factor with a lot of the people that have been through a MK Ultra style program, is that they were traumatized as a very young kid. So they were taken into the program, they volunteered for the program, or it was done, or they were sold into the program. Right? And a lot of them have had prior like sexual abuse as a child. So that was like priming them, and then getting them ready for what the government was ultimately going to do to them.
Yeah, I would just, I guess I would mention that, yeah, that's the right track. Uh, any sort of like a major shift in a person's like a personal life, like trauma or substance use or anything along those lines, provides in or an angle to work this system, right? Because it provides an opportunity for a change to occur, a change in the way a person's thinking, right? But I'll just put this idea out there. What if it were possible to observe the functioning of a person's brain and mind, and able to, there was a way to record that information from a distance. And then, so let's say you just profiled someone for like years or something along those lines, like for years and years, and you had their pattern down, you know how they did things, you know how they functioned in their life, you know how their brain functioned in different situations, for that information, and you have basically a profile of that person, at least the functioning of their brain and nervous system. You can make slight or small alterations to that data using AI by comparing it to other individuals' patterns, right? So basically, you could control a person from a distance if you had the ability to collect that data, inspect it, and understand it, and then retransmit it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense, but again, like I wouldn't understand how that would work if like you had like a rational mind about you. Like if something comes into my head that I'm like not familiar with, then I am immediately going to be like, no, that's like not me, right? That's not my thoughts. You know what I mean? Like it's not going to affect me because I know the way that I think and I'm very like cognizant of my own free will, right? They would literally have to break you down into like small little, they would have to fracture your mind to a point that you wouldn't even be able to realize who you even are. And that's another thing that, I mean, that's another problem with the MK Ultra programs is that a lot of people through the MK Ultra programs would go catatonic because they wouldn't be able to withstand the amount of trauma that they endured in order for them to split their psyche into many compartmentalized parts, and they weren't able to keep it all together, right? They weren't able to rationalize certain things, and they would just, become a zombie essentially.
Yeah, right, right. So for the more extreme cases, if like let's say like a TI is to become like a Manchurian candidate or a sleeper agent or something along those lines, yeah, there would be a certain amount of like breakdown. But I mean, there's also a number of people who are, I don't know, just sort of like criminally minded or into just malicious activities, that sort of thing. It's just more of like not necessarily like they're looking to be a criminal or something like that, but they just do, you know, antisocial or violent activity, that sort of a thing, right? Um, this technology isn't used just to make Manchurian candidates now. It's used also just to influence individuals individually and as a collective, right? The Sentient World Simulation is a program that ties into this. I don't know if the Sentient World Simulation is directly tied to this TI thing or not, but I do know that what it represents and what it can do is very useful in that it replicates individuals in a digital environment using collected data, which is accessible, and then also data from data brokers. And they can create profiles and then create certain events in a digital environment. And I don't see why anyone with any sort of power or the capability who would have access to such technology wouldn't use it to control people or to understand and predict and control the future.
Well, I guess my only thing would be is like, why would you need to do that? Right? You don't really need to put people like control people to do crime, right? You just throw them in an environment where crime is the only way that they can make a living. And then you have a lot of crime, right? You just throw them into the to the hood, and then they have no other choice but to do breaking and enterings and sell drugs and do crime. I mean, I don't. I guess I'm having a hard time understanding what would be the purpose of why would you need to do that when the circumstances and the environment that people are already in already facilitates that type of activity.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it would just be similar to the question, why would you need to do a program like MK Ultra? To me or to you, it's like, why would you need to control individuals? I mean, I don't have a good reason to do that. I wouldn't want to be a part of that. But there are people who were concerned with it and did participate in it and did set up programs like that. And it's continued on. I mean, I have no idea why different groups were interested in learning how to remotely influence individuals, but it's out there, the information's out there. And I think some individuals, some groups of people consider themselves as sort of like the architects of the universe or the architects of society, and they want to control the trajectory of society. They want to maintain their power. And so they'll go about by any means to make that happen. These are things that necessarily perhaps I don't think about or other people don't think about. There are definitely people who are very concerned with that. They put in a lot of work, and it's I would say like centuries long project in that respect. Not necessarily the technology as it is existing today, but that general idea of being able to control society. And I mean, it's basically it's the reason why were there kings and queens? Why are there presidents? You know, they're sort of controlling the way society works, and there are a few different ways to control it.
Yeah, I would agree with that to a certain extent. Like, yeah, why do we need a president? Why do we need all these laws and all these rules? I mean, when you think about it, though, it's like, well, could we operate without all of this stuff? Like, would we be okay if it was a? I mean, and some people would say, yeah, we would be all right, but who knows? I mean, dude, like we couldn't even expect people to be civil when we didn't have arrows on the ground in the grocery store telling us where to go. Like that shows a little bit about our society. I mean, people want to be led. That's another problem with our society in general. People want to be told what to do. If they're not told what to do, then they're lost. I mean, the perfect example of this is like I went into a Wendy's the other day and I wanted a frosty. I just wanted a frosty, a 99-cent frosty, a 99 cent. Well, it's probably more now. I haven't got a frosty in a really long time, but I was at a gas station. There was a Wendy's attached to it. Walked over to the Wendy's and I said, "Hey, man, can I get a frosty?" And he said, "Oh, I can't ring up a frosty right now because I'm only doing like to go orders, only on DoorDash and only on Uber Eats." I said, "Well, I have the cash right here. How much is it?" And he said, "Oh, it's I forget what he said it was, but he couldn't give it to me." And he was like, "I'm the only one working back here." And I was like, "Okay, well, you could have taken my dollar or whatever and then figured it out later and gave me the frosty, or you just could have given me the frosty for free.
Right.
Hey, you could have done me a solid. All I wanted was one frosty. Okay,
Yeah.
late at night, you could have just given me a frosty, bro. What is that going to do?" But people are so NPC'd out that they don't even want to break the rules for a job that they hate and that they don't even want to be doing. You know, and I'm like, that's the complete opposite of any job that I've ever had. Anytime that I was growing up, there were people that would like if when I was a kid, I was a skater. Like I would, skate around town all the time on my skateboard and stuff. And I would go into a Wendy's, and there was a girl that really liked all the skater people, and she would just give us free meals all the time. I'm like, yeah, that's cool. Like that's great. Like people, they don't want to push the status quo of anything. They don't want to break the rules. They have completely been subservient to the man, even in a job that doesn't even matter, a job that is so low on the totem pole, working at Wendy's. Like you can't give someone a frosty or take the money and then figure it out later. We've gotten so docile in our thinking, which I believe is a part of this program as well, right? They don't want people that are thinkers. They don't want people that are thinking outside of the box that will make their own decisions. They want people following a guideline of beliefs. And guideline of rules, and whenever they step out of line, then like they think that they're going to get in trouble, bro. You're not going to get fired for giving me a frosty, dude. More than likely, they don't even know, dude. Like they, it gets down to this like surveillance state type scenario that they're kind of like prepping us for, right? They want us to believe that we are constantly being watched all the time, 24/7. There's cameras everywhere, which there is. I mean, our phone is listening to every single thing that we say. How many times have you been talking about something, Jason, and then some ad pops up on your phone? I mean, 100%. It's listening to everything you say, every single conversation you've ever had is being recorded and stored somewhere in some kind of database. All your text messages, all of your stuff on every social media platform is all being stored somewhere, which I think is to create some sort of digital avatar of us, some sort of digital replica of us for something in the future. Do you think that that's going on?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, basic computers and the internet were primarily used through the military, and the idea of creating a simulation of reality started at least back in the Vietnam War. They had this thing called the McNamara Line, which was a defensive line separating the north of Vietnam from the south of Vietnam. They used a wide variety of sensors to detect motion, heat, scent using a chemical sensor, pressure, sound, all of those things. And they collected all that information. They had airplanes flying uh, in the sky 24/7 as a relay. So these sensors would transmit to airplanes in the sky, and then from the airplanes they would transmit to uh, a like a basically a center uh, where they would collect all that information in Thailand, and they would use computers to create a strategy based on the information that was on the ground in real time. And it would either set up an automatic response or it would provide options to a person who was at the console as far as, hey, these are the different things that could be done right now. And so they could set up like a strike using a gunship, and they would automatically fly out. They'd have the location keyed in, and they would just you know, have at it, destroy that area. The problem, though, that they've kind of figured out was that they couldn't tell the difference between a gun and a shovel, right? So if you got a group of farmers walking around with a shovel, or you got a troop of soldiers with rifles, the system couldn't figure that out. Well, that's been improved and has continued on. That technology was developed. It was sent to a really specific group, uh, big time group directly connected to an alphabet agency. I don't like to use names, but if anyone goes and looks into it, look at the McNamara Line and Igloo White, and you can follow up on it. This is also in the book, The Pentagon's Brain, by, what is it, Annie Frank, I think is her last name. Uh, So she's done a number of books. Another one was Phenomena, and so Annie Jacobson. Sorry, Annie Jacobson. So she's written a number of books. She's a great writer, and so that's where I found out about the ability to sense information. And I was just looking at another article from the WEF, and they're looking to have autonomous continuous sensing of the environments in the city and of human beings. So they would set up sensors so that basically you and I and everyone else would become just collection points, so that they would be able to use our bodies as a sensor to detect what's happening within us and around us, and then detect what's happening within cities. And then they would use something that they're calling multimodal algorithms, or using a variety of data inputs and using that to create a big picture of what's happening within the world and within communities. This is just over whatever was happening with the WEF this summer when they were meeting.
So, what do you think is the ultimate end goal here? I mean, how long could that type of society last where we're in these 15-minute cities, it's all smart cities, it's all surveillance based, it's all technology driven, everything's done by AI. Like, how sustainable is that? And how long do you think that it could go on for before people are like, I'm done with it? You know, it's kind of like Divergent. Have you seen the movie Divergent?
Absolutely, yeah.
Like, how, I don't know, understand how long that could possibly last. I mean, and I understand that that's like the sort of like the end goal of what these corporations and the government and some people at the top want to happen, but I don't really understand how they think that that's going to last forever. The only way that it can last forever is that if we all are just cyborgs, like legitimately augmented with robotics. And at that point, there's no real 100% biological life. And I don't know if that's what
Yeah, I
it
think
would necessarily be, because then it's like, well, who's then repairing the robots, right? Is the robots just repairing other robots? Have you seen that movie? Oh, what is it called? Extinction. The movie Extinction on Netflix, where there's like an alien invasion. The aliens come down and then they start like killing people and stuff. But then at the end of the movie, you realize that the aliens aren't really aliens. The aliens are humans, and the people that they're killing are AI robots.
right, right. Yeah, yeah. I think I remember that. I don't remember all the details of it, but it sounds absolutely familiar. That's sort of the way I think about the whole most of the UFO UAP phenomena. I substitute out the word alien and I add in whatever three letters for an alphabet agency that seems to fit the most because that makes the most sense. And that's the game plan. That's part of the game plan. So I don't know. Maybe I have it wrong. I could have it wrong. I might not uh, have all the details, but I think that's reasonable to at least consider that possibility. Maybe.
Well, when you look at like aliens and like UFOs and like the big term that's going around right now, non-human intelligence. I mean, non-human intelligence is what AI is. AI is non-human intelligence. So are these things just unmanned drones? Like, that's what it seems like. Or are they military drones? Or what's the deal with it? I mean, it's just a coincidence that the non-human intelligence term becomes popular right around this time of the rise of artificial intelligence and AI. You know, everyone's now, you know, using AI for all sorts of things. You know, and it's just a coincidence that now non-human intelligence is a really fashionable term that then coincides with AI.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It lines up.
Yeah, so it's like, what are these things really? I mean, are they actually just then? I mean, I believe that a lot of it's just the military and the government. Large percentage of it is just military craft. I don't know if you've seen that article that came out on the New York Post that talked about how the Air Force recruits were getting shown fake documents and fake photos of UFOs as like an initiation ritual. And then they were never told that the documents were fake and the photos were fake. So they went through their entire lives and their entire service thinking that they were exposed to some top secret document and top secret photos. It's
Yeah.
insanity, the mind games that they play, not only with the UFOs and the alien narrative and ufology, but just with everything.
Yeah, and I would have to add that, like, I certainly am open to the possibility that such a thing does exist outside of the realm of our current understanding. I also just know that all of these things can be replicated. The work has been put into replicating these basic, I would call, like, natural phenomena, you know? And so there's a whole sort of like covert subversive activity that's set up to kind of make everybody question what is real and what is not real. I do believe that there could be such a thing as alien entities. I don't think that it's happening quite the way that most people believe. Like, I don't think they've come here to help us out or whatever the narrative that's going on right now. That's not it. But I think possibly maybe something. I don't know. I really don't know. I'm open to it though, just because um, when you close yourself off from thinking about something in one way, then you're never going to be able to see it, you know? And so we're not always right. I'm not always right. So I just say, hey, maybe it could be true. But personally, I think that most of it is like military involved.
Absolutely. All right, let's watch this video from 2004 from a TED Talk by a gentleman named Woody Norris, which is responsible for a lot of this technology that we've been talking about and developing here.
All of audio as we know it is an attempt to be more and more perfectly linear. Linearity means higher quality sound. Hypersonic sound is exactly the opposite. It's 100% based on nonlinearity. An effect happens in the air. It's a corrupting effect of the sound, the ultrasound in this case, that's emitted. But it's so predictable that you can produce very precise audio out of that effect. Now, the question is, where is the sound made? Instead of being made on the face of the cone, it's made at literally billions of little independent points along this narrow column in the air. And so when I aim it towards you, what you hear is made right next to your ears.
Ooh, that's interesting, Jason.
Right, right. Yeah. And in this video, Woody Norris goes on to say, yeah, we can project sound into a military fighter, an Iraqi soldier, and pretend to be the voice of God. And we can put troop movements off in the distance so it sounds like something's happening off in the distance. And so, and then he also mentioned that every single unit that they produced was picked up by some sort of military connected or military group. So that's interesting. And so in my book, Theater of Shadows, I'm going to get into this a little bit more and sort of try to point out the way that this sort of a situation could happen to someone where they would think that they're having a certain type of experience, but point out how the technology is at the point now where people can't necessarily trust their senses automatically, especially in situations that are veering off far from your usual pattern, right? If it's like unusual or unexpected, it can be, I'm of the opinion that it could be replicated. I could be wrong, and I don't necessarily think it happens in every single situation. But there are situations where it appears to be the case. And people have come out, I think there's a guy, Greg Giles, he was connected to like a really big UFO group. And eventually he came to understand that he was not in contact with the Space Brothers, the aliens. It was something totally different. And he put that message out there and shut it down. And there are other people, there are other stories out there like that. It's not just in that situation. So I think David Hoffman, he wrote the book Secret Societies and Psychological Warfare. He really points out a lot of details into the operations of these sort of psychological operations, right?
Well, that brings in to question the channeling and the channeling of like entities. Like, what is this really going on here? Is this like really the military that's giving you all this information? Like, what's going on? Are they hacking into your brain? Let's watch a little bit more of this video.
I said we can shorten the column. We can spread it out to cover the couch. I can put it so that one ear hears one speaker, the other ear hears the other. That's true binaural sound. When you listen to stereo in your home system, both ears hear both speakers. Turn on the left speaker sometime and notice you're hearing it also in your right ear. So the stage is more restricted, the sound stage that's supposed to spread out in front of you. Because the sound is made in the air along this column, it does not follow the inverse square law, which says it drops off about 2/3 every time you double the distance. 6 dB every time you go from 1 meter, for instance, to 2 meters. That means you go to a rock concert or a symphony, and the guy in the front row gets the same level as the guy in the back row now, all of a sudden. Isn't that terrific? So we've been, as I say, very successful, very lucky in having companies catch the vision of this, from car makers who want to put a stereo system in the front for the kids, a separate system in the back. Oh, no, the kids aren't driving today. I was seeing if you were listening. Actually, I haven't had breakfast yet. A stereo system in the front for mom and dad, and maybe there's a little DVD player in the back for the kids, and the parents don't want to be bothered with that, or their rap music or whatever. So again, this idea of being able to put sound anywhere you want to is really starting to catch on. It also works for transmitting and communicating data. It also works 5 times better underwater. We've got the military had just deployed some of these into Iraq, where you can put fake troop movements 1/4 of a mile away on a hillside.
They laugh, but that's the real deal.
Yeah. I think that video came out like I want to say like 20 years ago, like 2008, something around there.
2004, I believe.
2004. Oh yeah, so like 20 years ago. And I mean that was being developed since at least the 1960s. One version of it, it's like called microwave hearing, right? So yeah, I mean the technology is out there. It's possible. If I were some person who had access to the resources and was in the position to use such a technology and a technique to influence people for whatever reason, I think that it would be done. And that's just an opinion. So yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Or you can whisper in the ear of a supposed terrorist some biblical verse. I'm serious.
They're laughing at it, but that's very real. I mean, that wasn't that used? I'm pretty sure that was used at one point, where they made people believe that they were hearing like the voice of God or something on like some kind of military soldiers. Am I getting that wrong, or is that right?
Yeah, it was used in Iraq, and supposedly they were projecting that sound into bunkers, and they were one thing was that they were replicating the voices of officers or generals and communicating information to people so that they would follow like contradictory orders. Another one was just creating like a state of mind of just fear and anxiety, and so on and on and on. And it's out there that has been reported on, and people go out and feel like they're interested in understanding a little bit more about how the world's working these days. They can look it up.
And they have these infrared devices that can look at their countenance and see a fraction of a degree Kelvin in temperature shift from 100 yards away when they play this thing. And so another way of hopefully determining who's friendly and who isn't. We make a version of this which puts out 155 decibels. Pain is 120. So it allows you to go nearly a mile away and communicate with people, and there can be a public beach just off to the side and they don't even know it's turned on. We sell those to the military presently for about $70,000, and they're buying them as fast as we can make them. We put it on a turret with a camera so that when they shoot at you, you're over there and it's there.
They put it on a turret, Jason. They're putting these electronic devices on a turret on public beaches.
Yeah, I something came to mind that I believe during World War II, the Germans developed a similar sort of technology where it wasn't necessarily sound, but it was interfering with the operation of the brain by transmitting a specific frequency that would incapacitate people, you know, basically like make them pass out or feel so much discomfort that they couldn't function and perform their duties as soldiers. Problem that they had at that time was that they could direct it towards the battlefield, but anyone who was operating it was also caught up in the signal, and so the person who turned it on would also be hit by it and be incapacitated. So, you know.
Yeah, don't they use that for like crowd dispersal stuff now in the United States? Like, don't they have like, it's like a big, they'll roll in like a tank. I think it was just used, not in the United States, but it was used in another country to disperse the giant crowd. Like people just started running.
I
It was
saw
like,
that.
yeah, it was like this big, like rectangular type of thing that had like a little point on the center of it, and then it just rolled into this crowd, and then everyone just started running out of nowhere. Yeah, I think it's like an ultra low ELF type of frequency or something that induces fear, and I think there's one that just like screws with your hearing or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are YouTube videos of people who like to dabble in technology, are into electronics, and they build these sort of devices. Like you could call it like psychotronic weapons. The term that is used today, it's a neuro weapon, because it's targeting the brain and the nervous system. But yeah, they're out there. I'm thinking of a video right now where a neuro weapon, or a psychotronic weapon, this guy built it. The details are out there, and so he had the schematics and he built it, and it disrupts your ability to speech. So it targets specifically the ability of your brain to speak coherently and clearly. And so, in other words, you start talking nonsensically, like word salad, right? You know, and so anyhow, these things do exist, and they're out there. So that's mostly, I think, the important thing to note is that these capabilities do exist. Most people are of the opinion that the human body and the human brain is inaccessible. Everything is private. You know, all of that is maybe was true at one point, but at this point in time, it's a little bit different. And so it's debatable as to whether like who could be influenced by this system, who could be influenced by this technology. That's open to debate, but it does exist and it is possible. So.
This one is called the Active Denial System. The Active Denial System, ADS, is a directed energy weapon developed by the United States military designed for a denial perimeter security and crowd control. Informally, the weapon is also called heat ray, since it works by heating the surface of targets such as the skin of a targeted human beings. Raytheon had marketed and reduced range version of this technology. ADS was deployed in 2010 with the United States military in the Afghanistan war, but was withdrawn without seeing combat. Okay. August 20th, 2010, in Los Angeles Sheriff's Department announced its intent to use the technology to control incarcerated people in the Patches Detention Center in Los Angeles, stating that its intent use was operational evaluation in situations such as breaking up prisoner fights. As of 2014, ADS was the only vehicle mounted weapon. This was what I was talking about. Through the U.S. Marines and police were both working on portable versions. The ADS was developed under a sponsorship with the Department of Defense and Non-Lethal Weapons Program and the Air Force Research Laboratory, and as a lead agency. In 2014, there were reports that Russia, China were developing their own versions of the active denial system.
Yeah, they also use that sort of technology on like tanker ships or those big ships, container ships that are in the ocean. They use it and to hit like pirates and whatnot, like literal pirates, the type that try and like take over oil tankers or try to take over container ships. You can look that up too and see that. So this stuff is out there. So I think I don't really like to inspire too much fear or anything like that. It's just worthwhile to know what is and is not possible. And generally speaking, there's a large amount of people that are just wrapped up in many different issues, and some of them are important, some of them less important. But we all have to decide what's important and what do we spend our time looking into. What do we understand about the world? Do we understand the world as a thing, as sort of like a fantasy thing that we imagine it to be, or do we understand it as it actually is? And there's a group of people that believe there's no such thing as truth, and that the truth doesn't exist, and the truth is just an opinion. But I think otherwise.
Well, that weapon also brings into question the Dyatlov Pass incident in Russia, brings into question the Kamar Duban incident also in Russia. Are you familiar with those two, where the Dyatlov Pass, a group of 8 hikers, I believe it was, were all found with their clothes off, like frozen in the. It seems like an experiment, and that happened right by a military base as well. You know, and then the Kamar Duban incident was in '93, I believe, 92 or 93, where almost the exact same thing happened. Where there were these group of hikers that went up on this mountain, and one of them got deathly sick, started puking up blood. They were bleeding out of their ears, they were bleeding out of their eyes, and bleeding out of their nose and out of their mouth. And then one of the group went close to them, and then they also got incapacitated. One lady even like started bashing her head off of a rock until she died.
Wow.
And then there was one survivor of that, Valentina Corvinia, I think was her name. She survived, and that's the only reason that how we know what happened, because she survived. She got away from whatever was going on with these people. And they took their clothes off, like, and she went down to this lake, and there was a kayaker down there, and the kayaker took her to the police department, and then she filled out a police report and told the police exactly everything that happened. But that seems like some kind of experiment too, with some kind of nerve agent or something. It was like out of nowhere, like one person in the back of the group collapsed, the other person went to check on them, then they started getting sick. Then one by one, all of them started experiencing the same exact symptoms. It's a insane case.
Yeah, there are other cases like that. There are too many out there that sort of have that same framework, and it's like you have to question. Okay, looking at this as objectively as possible, for what reason would they start all at the same time, or one after the other, stripping off all their clothes? What would induce them to sort of have that sort of a reaction? And obviously it's difficult to, with not having been there, to say definitively, yeah, this is what happened, but it seems to line up with what the technology is capable of and what its intention is to do. And intended to disrupt people. And I think one of the definitions of a weapon is to induce a person to enter into a frame of mind or into a state of being that's more in line with the goals of the person operating the weapon or is using the weapon on the other person.
All right, this is the incident right here. It's called the Kamar Duban incident, and I was right. It was August 5th, 1993. The deaths, according to Valentino Ordachenko, the sole survivor who was descending down the mountain at the altitude of 2,397 meters, who was at the back of the group, started screaming. He was bleeding from his eyes and ears, frothing at the mouth. He fell to the ground, convulsing, and then went still. Corvina ran up to him, trying to get him to gain consciousness. A moment later, she cried out, having the same symptoms. She convulsed, then collapsed on top of the other gentleman who had gotten to the Corvina first, who was the next to collapse. So three people were collapsing, grabbing their throat. Though she couldn't breathe, she clawed over to a nearby rock and bashed her head against it until she went limp. While running, they collapsed and died, throwing up blood and clawing at their throats, tearing their clothes off. Ordachenko hurried away, but shortly after, Shavishkin also collapsed, convulsing. Ordachenko ran down the mountain, set up a tent right under the nearby colored tree, and fell asleep. On the next day, she returned to the site of her friend's death to retrieve their supplies she needed from their bodies. For 4 days, she followed a group of power lines down the mountain in hopes that someone would find her. She found a river, which started following it on August 9th. She was found by a group of Ukrainian kayakers, who took her to the nearest police station where she filed a report. That's an insane story, dude.
Yeah, and there are other stories very similar, not that extreme. But there's one part to that where it sounds like the person's body maybe is being taken over, and so their ability to control themselves. And many of the people who we consider or could have the label of like a Manchurian candidate, they say that they feel like they're sort of like in a trance and that their body's being taken over and that they can't control themselves. And so we don't have a natural defense to ward off a signal overtaking our body, right? The University of Washington did this study where they had two people. They were both wearing brain-computer interfaces that were basically like a skull cap on the top of their head with EEG sensors or electroencephalograph sensors sensing the functioning of the brain. But then they also had a sort of a setup where they could have a magnetic pulsing in a certain select part of the brain. And so one person was put on the one side of the campus, and then the other person put on the opposite side of the campus. And one person, the person in control, was playing a video game and had control of the video game, and then the other person did not. And so the first person, person A, let's just say, was able to play the video game and send the signal of his hand moving and clicking buttons to play the video game to the second person. And the second person acted out the physical actions that were being transmitted from the original first person. And that was signals they were transmitted through the internet, right? And this was, I don't know, some years back, probably like a decade ago. And research into that basic idea has continued onward. So yeah, there's that too. So it sort of makes me wonder, like, okay, what happens to people occasionally? This sort of thing seems like it happens. There are other stories, like there were two women in the United Kingdom from Sweden, two sisters, and there's this video footage of them just running out into traffic, getting like ran over by cars, and then the police go and pull them back to the shoulder, and then they get back up and they run out, and one of them gets hit by what looks like a semi truck or a box truck or something. They get flung into the air, and so that incident is labeled by some people as these people are a victim of a psychotronic weapon or a neuro weapon. So yeah.
Did they survive the second?
Yes, yeah, they both survived. They were both extremely damaged, but they did recover. And then one of them went out and was released from the hospital, or left the hospital. The other, I think, was put in jail or something like that, for one reason or another. And the person who was released went out and just ended up killing some random guy for whatever reason. Some guy that was trying to help her out because she was just wandering the streets. And he saw that, and tried to do what he thought was the right thing and help her out. And she just ended up murdering him. So it's a pretty bizarre story, and it sort of makes you wonder. And there are other stories out there. Some of them I'm sort of of the mind that, like, okay, how do we know what's going on here? You know, how do we actually know what's happening here? But it seems like there are patterns or signals that sort of point to something's odd about this story. Something's not lining up. You know, mental health and mental illness, sure, it's a real thing, and but the ability to manufacture, create it too, does exist. And I'm also, is it possible to control the functioning of other human beings, not necessarily just their mental state or their emotional state or their cognitive ability, like their awareness or their ability to focus, or so on, but their physical actions, because all those things are processed in the brain. They're accessible, and so that's where we're at.
Cool. What was the name of that incident? Do you know what the name of it is? I'm gonna look that up.
I can't recall it right now, but yeah, it was just two women. I believe they're from a Scandinavian country, and they were just running out into traffic, and like on a, whatever the English version of a freeway or a highway is. I don't call it something else, I think, than what we do in the US. But
Wow, I'm gonna have to look into that. Well, Jason, thanks so much for coming on, brother. Really appreciate it. Can you let people know where to find you online, and let people know when your book is coming out and where they can find your book, and anything else that you would like to plug, social media, other shows, whatever you want to do, brother?
yeah, so I don't use a lot of social media, but if people want to send an email, you can reach me at mkzine@gmail.com. And I'm working with Ron Patton to set up the MKZINE podcast, MKZINE Radio, on the Ground Zero network. So we're working on getting that put together. We had it set up as a previous iteration with a previous group who was doing all of that, a different group, but now Ground Zero has moved on, and they're doing their own thing. And so we're working to update and get new episodes online. And then, so as far as the book, that's being worked on right now. I've done most of the research, doing the writing and editing, and I hope to have that out in the fall this year, 2025, fall, winter 2025. That'll be self-published, and I'm guessing you can find that on the one online retailer that everybody knows about but probably doesn't want to use.
Amazon.
You said it, not me.
Well, I'll get the links in the description for everyone to check out more of Jason's work, and everyone else. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Please be sure to hit the thumbs up button to help the channel and the algorithm. Share, subscribe, hit the bell icon as well for notifications, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.